Hello, everyone. It's me. I'm back. Been an interesting week. Going from being very sick, which is the first time I really had something like a vomiting bug, to doing some work, to having lots of fun in beautiful Popoli. So I'll get started, and I'll make this one hopefully quicker than last week because last week was a giant episode. Um, the things that hit me this week were, oh my gosh, it's been hot. So it's been consistently hot here every day. We had one huge storm in the whole time I've been here, and thank God that put out many of the fires that were in our region. I believe there's a little one still going locally, but they're keeping their eye on it. Um, So I wanted to show you the temperatures. And I also wanted to just show you there's so many memorials you see around in every single village you go to. And I wondered, it really made me think, do we ever really know what's going to happen after we pass to our memory? And I'm such a fan of Who Do You Think You Are? And I caught up on some episodes of that this week. And again, it reminded me that you can only be yourself. So doing what you think is right, doing what you enjoy, doing what you want to leave as your legacy, I guess, may not be reflected in a beautiful stone plaque on the wall. But, it's important that we leave our print in some positive way. Writing out the challenges, obviously, there's messages in that for everybody. And again, this week taught me that I need to slow down regularly so that you can not get sick, hopefully. All right, I'll jump into this and we'll hopefully get through some. So last week, I remember telling you that I had two villages that Lisa and I went to in our car that I wanted to save up for you. This is just outside of the town of Bominaco. I'm going to pronounce it. It's right up in the hills in L'Aquila, where the fires were. The fires weren't far from this place. And that just scares the hell out of me. The fact that these beautiful places are at risk. So, yeah, this was sitting, that isn't it on the right. This is where I'm standing is where the churches were that we saw. There were two churches, and up the top was more of like the monastery and the castle and things that have been built over the years. And to tell you how hot it was even too hot for Lisa to walk up that hill. So it's been hot. So the church on the left is called the Oratory of St. Pellegrino. Now, it's got lots of history, and I wanted to read you some and I might just show you the inside, because this was the church that had that ceiling that I showed you last week, just briefly. And the recording in WhatsApp is done in Italian. We didn't get to go to a English speaking tour through this place because it's hidden up in the hills, but it's a recognized it's a recognized monument monastery from a really, really long time ago. Anyway, it needs to be preserved. I don't know how they do it. They don't actually leave the lights on. When we first went in, it was dark, and they only turn the lights on when they do the tour so that it protects these beautiful medieval Gothic art. So I just wanted to tell you some of the things about this little church. So apparently in 1263, there was a monastic complex built. And again, I've got to take my hat off to the monks and what's the lady's called? Gosh, that's gone out of my head. Anyway, to those people back in the day that built these churches, right at the top of mountains, that's dedication. It's absolute faith and dedication. So it was dedicated to Saint Pellegrino, who was a martyr from this area. And apparently his tomb is buried underneath the church. And it was originally built around the 8th century. Oh my gosh. Charlemagne, who was the first Roman emperor, as well as had many other titles, and I'm sure you will have heard of Charlemagne, donated the land and the church. The monks came in about the year 1001, and they created like a bigger monastery complex and community. The paintings, I can't really describe how unique they are. I guess being the medieval art, they're unique in that, but they're painted on these stones. I assume they're painted by the monks. They're not painted by some, Michelangelo or anyone. But to me, they were just as beautiful. And the interesting thing about them was that the frescoes um, tell a cyclical story around the building of the life of Christ. That's what it had everything to do with. All the stories, the different stories were there, that you knew, like um, the Last Supper was there, and there was, Mary and, all the guys hanging out at the table. And sorry to be disrespectful to those people who are religious. But one of the things that I was really fascinated by was that they had a calendar. And so there were 12 panels that were on the wall, and each of the panels showed not only the 12 months of the year, but the seasons, and also they were used by the people as a calendar to keep track of time. So when you were pregnant, you could literally be watching the time go by. And interestingly, when you think about it, our oral stories that are so prominent around the world is because people didn't read. And so when they came to church, this was a time to be like in awe of not only the art and the beauty, but to hear these stories that, were passed down from generation to generation. Oh yeah, my favorite monk, St. Francis, he was there. There was the nativity scene. And then on the right, you can see this giant Jesus. And I hope my picture's not standing over you, Jesus. Sorry if it is. But it was the whole height of the building. It was just enormous. And some of the images were just unbelievable. So I'll show you some more. Being that it was so old and medieval, the artwork, I can't imagine carving into these stones, but these were two great big stone walls that sat between the back of the church and the front. You can just see the lady through the middle, but I've just merged the pictures together. But the church was actually in two halves. And so these icons were on the wall like a dragon. I'm sure they mean lots, and I'm sure there were terrible stories told to the people about the risks of not doing the right thing and, Christianity. So, again, I want to ask the question on the left, does anyone know what these things are? And if you're a Catholic, I'm sure you do. And if you're Italian, I'm sure you do. But for many of us that weren't brought up with this faith and this reverence to the people of the stories from the Bible, these are, I don't even know what they're really called, but they're carried by four people, two on each end, and they're carried around at celebrations. So when there's special events and they're celebrating, some religious story or religious happening, they will carry and worship these beautiful icons around the villages. And I've seen it happen in Lourdes in France as well. But it was lovely to see these little ones in this church, and they've spent so much time making these images. And again, my friend St. Francis on the right. So the church inside, you'll see in the image on the right, has lots of stone carvings, and the church itself. This is a different part of the This is the second church. The original, I guess it's the bigger one. It looks a bit more like a cathedral, but it has the timber ceilings. Again, I don't know what they're called, but the age of the building is told by, I guess, the plainness of the imagery in this one. And they obviously would have had paintings and things that have now long gone, but the carvings were amazing. Okay, better stop raving. So that was in Bominaco. So if ever you want to go there, I think it took us, oh, it didn't, it's between a half and an hour from where we are. It's not that far, but again, you're going up mountains. Um, these are just some images of the village that we went to next. Well, the one that I wanted to show you, which is called San Stefano di Sassano. Has a pretty ring to it. And just the age, I guess the age of the buildings. And then on the right, you can see the coming of the modern times with the solar panels. So it was, and as Italy is, this dichotomy of these two conflicting, I guess, priorities. And one is saving these beautiful old buildings, but then doing it in a way that's sustainable, because people can't afford to keep doing the places up because they're so damaged and so worn because of the way they were constructed, I guess, and the earthquakes and the fires and global warming. The places are, are changing. And one of the massive things that I heard, which came from this village called San Stefano, was, and I did some research on it, was that at the turn of the century, there were actually like 1,500 people living in the little village, and now there's about 100. And I wanted you to guess who might have built this tower. Like, the tower's actually been renovated just in 2021, I think it was finished. But when you walk around these villages and you hear the stories across all the different ones, you hear the same threads of things. And as last week I talked about the Aragonese castles and towers and things. Well, this happened when we got to San Stefano. So again, it's in the province of L'Aquila, which is, I guess it's the mountainous region just above where we are. The tower itself, or the province, it's in the province of L'Aquila. Gosh. So this started as a monastery. This little village started as a monastery in the 9th century. In 1240, it became a settlement. And then in the 14th century, those Aragonese came along again. And I did look up what nationality the Aragonese are, but they're a Spanish blend. Oh gosh, I can't think of the other culture. Sorry, but they were obviously travellers, and as we know, even in Australia, the Spanish and the Portuguese and things made it all the way around to our side of the world. But this little village combined Spain and Italy, and I guess right back to the 14th century. So the region grew mainly because of sheep and farming sheep on the top. And guess, I'm going to tell you who built the tower. Those Medici from Florence. And I noticed it because I saw the Florence. I know that Florence has the coat of arms. The Medici has the balls inside their coat of arms. And when I saw that on the wall, I said to Lisa, "Oh my gosh, I think that's the Medicis." And then when I came and did my research, I found that one of the Medicis had, in fact, owned the area and started producing fine wool and exporting it from this village. So in 1994, unfortunately, there was an earthquake. Oh, no, sorry. There was an earthquake in 2009. In 1994, a young entrepreneur found the village, I guess, up in the mountains and decided he was going to set up a hotel, as you do. And But in 2009, there was an earthquake which damaged much of the village, and that Medici Tower ended up having to be rebuilt. So it's a Renaissance medieval village. And to me, the steepness of it, again, how people build in these places is just incredible. So I'll just show you some more pictures. Oops, sorry, wrong icon. To talk about the quirkiness of this place. And obviously, fires, you think everything built out of stone is not going to be impacted by fire, but the picture on the right shows that even they have stone, but it's the timber connects it to everything and makes it, I guess, lighter to build. But some of the little alleyways and the quirky little corners that end up happening when they build to the slope of the mountain were just amazing. I went down into this place on the left, and you literally, I couldn't get through it. So back in the day, it might have been an escape hole or something for people running away from the police. But definitely one of the most picturesque villages I think I've seen in a long time. You can see the medieval style, and again, reminiscent of Florence. To me, it looks like those towers, those beautiful buildings in Florence. This is a little church that on the right, very, very old again. And I guess when you're poor and you still have the faith, everything you can put into these places is what they do. And so the outside might not be so incredible, but the insides show their love of and their faith in the religion to look after them. We managed to find somewhere to eat called La Zeppa. I will tell you about it because there were quite a few restaurants happening. Even though there's only 100 people that live there, it's a tourist destination, and when we got there were not that many people, but there were hundreds of bikes, literally motorbikes, arriving and coming and going because it's so mountainous. The roads are amazing. But this place, I found my arrosticini, which are the little skewers with lamb on them, which, oh my gosh, I ate 10. Now, when you say that and you think of skewers at home, we have big chunks of meat and big chunks of vegetables. Theirs is the tiniest little cubed meat on these sticks, but they're very common in this region. And I really like this place. They had a big map on the wall that had pins, and we got to pin. They had Lismore on their map, so I got to put a pin in Lismore. And you can tell the quirkiness of the owners by the paintings that were in their building. And we had lots of fun. It was a really lovely place to explore. So San Stefano di Sassano. We then left, and this is the last place I want to mention. This is called Prata La Polina. I can spell that for you if you need to. It's close to us. It's not far from here. And when I first came over to do the tour to look at all the houses, through the company that we did the tour with, hello, Dave, this was one of the villages that is becoming very, very popular with expats, and the village itself has a lovely feel to it. We had difficulty finding a park, which is often what puts you off staying and looking around, but that was mainly because of the construction, and they block streets and you can't get through, or they're very thin. But the town itself has an amazing outlook, and it has an incredible church. Again, I know you can't do an Italian post without talking about the churches, but this isn't a huge village. It probably is a town, but the most incredible commitment to building these beautiful buildings in small towns. It may have been much bigger in the day. I didn't do a lot of research on it in itself, but you can look it up. But the lovely things that I've sort of again fallen in love with are the the statues that they make, and whatever they can make them out of, they will make. And they're always beautiful. And I can see how for people, worshipping these icons and putting their faith in, in how they could protect them and look after them when, things were getting tough. And I'm sure that happened a lot. So these are my power three, I think, my power three people. I just want to again just show you one of this, iconic villages on the side of the mountain. That one's taken through the glass of the car window. But you can see, that they have their own beauty. I guess even though they seem to be quite plain, there is beauty in the villages. And for me, it's the heart that make them amazing. Okay, now I'm back in Popoli, and I wanted to show you just some quirky things that I spotted, and I did put some of these in the WhatsApp group. But when I saw the name of the street, I thought, oh yeah, there I could be. It's Sue Kardashian, really. It's my Via Sue Kardashian street. I thought that could be me. And then this is our street where this church is hopefully one day going to be renovated. You can see that the tree is actually grown in the side, so that's how long I think that scaffolding's been up. But at the back of it is this enormous church building, I would say, by the size of the doors. And I'd love to see the doors open and see what's behind that outer wall. And many, many, many buildings are being done up in Popoli, and it's such a vibrant place. I think we've been so lucky, and I would suggest if you want to come in August, the celebrations are just incredible. I needed to show you some photos. I haven't been eating breakfast out much, probably because I don't get up till it's too late at the moment, and you can't have cappuccino too late in Italy. But this was my first splurge for breakfast. I ended up having to have 2 coffees. Again, if you ask for a cappuccino, it really is just the coffee water with froth on the top. And so this dolce beside me was so sweet. I ended up with 2 cups of coffee and the sweet for €5. So that's less than $10. So you can afford to eat breakfast out over here. On the right is my masterpiece. I cooked. I went shopping in the bigger of the shops here, which is called a Conad, and I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. That's how I pronounce it. It's quite quirky. But I ended up seeing things and I thought, I'm just going to make my own. It's ravioli. I didn't make the ravioli, but I made the sauce and I put the pesto on it. I just felt so proud. It just looked like a real Italian meal, and one of the first and most flamboyant I've made since I've been here. So again, some quirky things around Popoli. Popoli, I've told you before, is a very old city. It was a much bigger city. And this week I've been learning lots from some lovely people that I've met who were born here. Some of them are now in their 90s, and they're the most amazing people. And the 2 that I've met, Pina and her mum is 91, and smokes like a chim. Well, she didn't smoke like a chimney, but she's still smoking. Apparently, she doesn't draw back. She just puffs it. And cigarettes are so cheap over here for those of you who are smokers. Like, she bought a pack of cigarettes. It's less than €5 for 20 cigarettes. Like, incredible. But that's because everyone smokes. And it obviously, maybe, I don't know if they're different brands, but she's still going strongly. And she told me that back in the day there were more places to drink than there were people in Popoli, and now it's starting to generate that growth again. And this picture on the right is of one of our favourite cafes that we go to that was turned into a bigger place. And that's what she said. Lots of places have closed their doors and they're just empty. So that's why having the expats, and mainly they are American, I would say, coming to this area, is actually bringing life and business back. But you don't need to get them started with much. I like this little blue Vespa. Still can't see myself riding one, but I like to take pictures of them. So this week, as I said, was more of the events, and they were designed around the children, which was quite quirky because um, the children are out like till after midnight. I came home after midnight and there's still dozens of families walking around with their children. I don't know how they get up the next day and aren't grumpy, but it is school holiday time, so they're fine to do that. However, this is our little piazza down from us, and that's where the fountain is in the middle. I think it's just hiding behind there. That's where the guns were going off and things last week. But this week, it's about jumping castles. And I love that they call it Popolandia. It's so cute. Everything's so quirky. I had to show you this. Oh, I didn't move the photo over. Sorry. That's a really poor slide. But this is the most giant slide jumping castle that I'd ever seen. And it's of a rooster. And for those Roosters fans, I am not supporting your team. However, this was very prominent. It was huge. It was sitting right up the end of a street. And it was literally like 2.5 stories high. It was so high. And the kids are just sliding down the slide. And that's part of this event. The event had food, it had music. I wanted to show you the one in the middle in particular because you can just see Homer Simpson in the middle. So this was a band that were walking around. There's, I think, a chicken as well, and they were playing instruments that were not instruments. They were making music using made up anything they could find, sort of instruments, walking around the streets and keeping it live. And the children were having a lovely time watching these crazy people walking around. There was also a band that were dressed up. You can see a Smurf lady, and there was a Smurf man at the end playing the guitar, singers dressed up like iconic Disney characters. But the families were out, and in the thousands. It was such a big event. I showed you in the WhatsApp group, this queue, because it was Gambero, I think it is I researched it to be the term for prawn, but apparently it's freshwater crayfish that they can find in this region. And so there was this queue to get your food, and people just queue, and they're patient and they're listening. And I guess it's the experience of being there. Then last night, I had to save it to do this because last night there was the back to the 90s music, which was so loud. We ended up, because I've been hanging out with this wonderful group of people, and I'm going to try and remember to say their names correctly. So there is Pina and her mum. Still don't know her mum's name. I'll have to find that one out. Then there's Rosina, who is from Melbourne, who is a local person who comes back to visit Popoli, and was born here, I believe. There is Noemi, and she is again, and her partner is Giacomo. And I say partner, they've been married, and I guess, because I didn't ask them, but I'm guessing they're in their 70s, and they've both been lost their partners, and they found each other and have married, which just brings music to my heart. And then the amazing, oh my gosh, I can't remember how to pronounce his name. He's called Ben because he's an American, and he comes back as well. Oh my gosh, I've got to remember how to say his name. Because it's a common name, and you don't think about the fact that when they move to other countries they change their names. And we met this person called Lily, and Lily, I think her name is, and she's changed her name from Chinese to Italian. So these a beautiful group of people I've been hanging out with, and the lucky thing is that Pina and her mum spend 6 months here, 6 months in America. So Pina did some translating for me. And it turns out that Noemi is an early childhood educator still in her 70s. And when we were, she has this beautiful vibe. These people have the most amazing heart. And so I've been hanging out with them understanding probably a third of what they're saying, but the threads, I'm picking up more of the common terms. And so we had this, I wouldn't say raging evening, but it was fun listening to the music and staying out because it's the evenings are lovely and cool. The piece of the church on the right, and I've blocked when I think I put this photo in the WhatsApp group, but you can always the castle at the back's lit up, and then just to the right of the left of this screen is a cross that's on the hill as well. So if you see those lights, you'll see there's a cross and the castle behind this very, very old church. So the image on the right is, I think, when I went back and had a look at it, I think it's in Scano. We went to the town above the lake that you might remember from last week. But I wanted to show you about challenges. It made me think about challenges and how that, again, I keep forgetting to say, but if you don't want to listen to my rambling at the end, you can go. Have fun. See you next week. But one of the things that I thought about when I was looking at this week and thinking about what went on with my sickness, Lisa leaving, there's been some admin stuff from home that's been challenging, talking through things to sort things out. That doesn't stop when you're on holidays. And unfortunately, you can't just switch off. I guess life doesn't allow you just to shut down and, explore the world without any reminders of things that are happening in real life. And so this week's, there's been some challenges. But the message for me was the two together, I guess, in the bottom and in the two with the top, is just to work out how you cope with challenges. And for me, the lessons that you get, and they say, oh, every challenge gives you a lesson. But for me, you're learning and you're practicing to make movement forward, not get stuck in the challenges. So thinking about this week, being yourself to address those challenges. And I talked last week about me, doing all the research. But again, this week, the message to me was you can do that, but then the decisions can be outside of your hands, which has happened with my tax bill. And so allowing myself to slow down and process and not put so much pressure on myself to think that I'm just going to be able to make all these decisions. But then meeting Noemi and realizing that we are all teachers and we are all learners. And every day I've been learning from these wonderful people. And she made the statement in Italian, which Pina translated for me kindly, to say that you people from the same cloth meet each other, or they're attracted to each other. And so I realized that I had this lovely warm vibe from her, and she is an early childhood educator. And so eventually I feel like you find people that you connect with if you get out there. And that's what I've tried to do this week, is challenge myself to go out of an evening by myself, which, I don't like doing. But having made this friend in Pina, I now can become more part of the community slowly, slowly, piano, piano. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm so happy to send this to you. Week 13, can you believe that? On the downhill run. Next week, I am going to the beach. The weather is going to hold for another week. That's what it tells me. So I'm going to hang out on the beach. I've got some work to do, and I'm may not have a huge report next week, but I'll definitely be showing you around Pescara and perhaps a little place called Silvi, which is on the coast further north of Pescara. They're the two places I'm hoping to spend the week in. And Michelle and Renee, Hey, they're back today, coming over from their home in America to their home in Italy. And so I have to move out tomorrow, sadly, from my beautiful place. It's mine now to share as well. Okay, lots of love. See you next week. Have a great week. And I believe it's warming up, heading towards spring. So it's hopefully going to start cooling down for the people here as well. Lots of love. Bye. Ciao.